Hello! I hope you guys are all okay and all good. Welcome to another video. My name is George. For those of you who don't know, feel free to subscribe down below if you're not already. And this, I'm trying something different. I posted a thing on Instagram, on my Instagram story, which you can follow at the George Lester if you are that way inclined, which was basically about my writing vlogs. Like, I was editing the most recent writing vlog and I thought it was boring. I thought that it was very repetitive, it was very samey, and I wasn't giving you anything new. It was just sort of the same thing for like 15 minutes and I didn't like it, and I almost didn't upload it, but then I did anyway because I'd said that I was going to, so like, it's there now. So basically I've taken some suggestions on board of ways that I can make these writing videos a bit more interesting. So that is in the pipeline. You may have noticed, or you may not have, I don't know, that there's not been a writing vlog for, well, there wasn't one last week, but there is one today, sort of. I handed in my first round of edits for Boy Queen about, well, it was a week ago on Friday. And I learned a lot doing those edits. I'm sorry, the sun is out and it is glorious, but like every now and then I will move and get like a scanners thing over my face. It's an Instagram filter waiting to happen. So I finished those edits a week ago on Friday and I learned a lot from it. And I decided to write down what I'd learned, almost as like reminders to myself for when the next edit comes back and I basically have to do the whole thing again. By which I mean I have to go through the book again. Like, this was only the first round. There's so much more to do before the book is ready to be out in the world, which isn't scary at all. So today I wanted to talk about the things that I've learned and the things that I've experienced during this first edit. Also, there are like a few little tips that I'm going to put out into the world now so that when I come to do the second round of edits, which I think is imminent, like I think it's coming for me, I can feel it in the air, and I have to do it all again. These are things to remind myself of how to tackle the beast, as it very much were. Yeah. There's so much to do before it can go out into the world. That was only the first round. There's the second round, there's line edits, there's copy edits, there's proofread. There's so much more to go. And it comes out in August. So I don't have a huge amount of time to do it in. That's the other thing. I'm very aware that I'm doing this on a very different schedule to how like a normal book would work. Like, I say normal book, like there is not really a normal schedule for a book, I guess. But like, this is happening in less than, like, it's, the whole book is happening in less than a year, which isn't usual, or at least it's not the ideal schedule, especially considering when Pan Macmillan bought the book, I hadn't written it yet. So I wrote it before November, before I went on holiday, and so I started editing it like mid-December. I opened the document and I started working on it on the 15th of December, and I handed it in last Friday. So it's all happening very, very fast because I know that Rachel is currently working on it to get the next round of edits back to me. The first thing that really hit me when I started editing this book was that editing is really hard. What I had was a lovely edit letter from Rachel and Sim, which kind of outlined everything that needed to be done character-wise. And then also I had the meeting that we had where we talked about a lot of stuff, and I took a lot of notes, and Sim took a lot of notes that kind of outlined where changes need to be made and how those changes were going to come about. And I was overwhelmed. For every time I sat down to do the edit, I felt unbelievably overwhelmed and I had no idea where to start. It wasn't until I sat down and made a plan, that's right, that it actually I started to make progress. I basically, when they took the sample of the book, they also wanted a synopsis. So I had a synopsis, which is what I worked from when I wrote it. So what I did was I went all the way back to that and I went through and basically replanned the entire book from start to finish. There were bits that stayed the same. There were a lot of things that changed, a lot of new things that were added in, a lot of old things that were taken out. But basically I replanned the entire thing. And by the end of the edit, I had made it somewhere in the region of 20,000 words longer. I'd taken out stuff along the way, so it's probably more words than that, but it was about 20,000 words longer by the time I got to the end. So it didn't start working properly for me until I made a plan. So until I kind of sat down and thought, this is how I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do piece by piece. That was when it started working out for me. Which I think is true of any project. Like, when a project is really, really huge, or it feels really, really huge, the best thing to do is to break it down. So what I did was essentially break down what is now like a 78,000 word book. I broke it down into 31 chunks that I could tackle one at a time. Some were brand new chapters that were completely rewritten and completely brand new. Others were chapters that I'd already written that I needed to go through and tweak and fix and make sure that they made sense with the continuity of the plot. So breaking it down into chunks was hugely helpful for me. The other thing that was hugely helpful is the fact that I'm in a group chat with a bunch of other writers who have books coming out in 2020. And that was hugely helpful for when I was having a panic, and I could put something in there and you get kind of a little bit of reassurance and a little bit of backing. Or just Twitter in general. Like, book Twitter is full of lovely people who will have your back if things aren't going so well. I tweeted about being overwhelmed with the edit, and there are a lot of authors who are like, same, this is how it is for me, and this is things that have happened to me. I tweeted when I felt like I was making the book worse, which some authors replied saying, that means you're nearly done and you're ready for someone else to look at it. So it's like nice to have that community around you, a community of people who can help make you feel slightly less panicky about this thing that you're trying to do. Which brings me on to my next point. I reached a point towards the end of the edit where I just felt like I was making the book worse, where I was going through it and I couldn't see the forest for the trees, and it was like, because I'd added so much and I'd done it with track changes, and if anyone's worked with Microsoft Word and track changes, it just looks a clusterfuck of red shit everywhere. And I was just staring at it and it was like, I have no idea if this is any good. I have no idea if I have, and I felt like I had lost the essence of the book and what the book was supposed to be in the first place, because suddenly, was I trying to do too much? Was I not doing enough with it? Was I even doing the things that I said I was going to do? And the fact that there were people on Twitter, like authors on Twitter, who said that means that you're nearly ready for someone else to see it, or that means that you're nearly done, that was really, really useful for me, because I kind of thought, oh, maybe at this point, I've spent too much time with it, if that is a thing that is possible, because I did a lot of it in like the last week before it was due. I did a lot of that work then. I'd obviously spent a lot of hours on it in that week, to a point where I wasn't even sure if it was right anymore. I needed breathing space from it in order to come back to it, which is actually something that I would give as a piece of advice to anyone who is looking to edit their book, whether it's via someone else doing it for you or you wanting to edit something. Take some time away from it, because when you take some time away from it, you forget things, you become slightly less attached to it, and you can look at it with almost a fresh pair of eyes. Like, that's what I've done when I've self-edited in the past. I've taken some time away from it, I've changed the font, and then I've read it out loud to see if it has made sense. And I think that's all I needed. I just needed a little bit of space from it so that I can come back to it when the second edit comes through, and I'll be able to see, obviously with Rachel and Sim's input and their attention and their love, I will be able to see whether or not I feel like I'm doing the right things. Does that make any sense? Like, I need that space from it. I'm doing a lot of hand movements. I need a bit of space from it so that I can look at it anew. I think that makes sense. That's like a piece of editing advice that is all over the internet, that the first thing to do when you finish a book is to put it in a desk drawer, metaphorically, a file on your computer, backed up in several places, and leave it a little while before you come back to it and start working on it again. So I think perhaps I'd reached that point, having looked at it for such a long time, or such a long time within a short time frame, that I needed someone else's eyes on it or some space away from it so I could look at it with fresh eyes. And I'll get both of those things. Which brings me on to point number 4. Oh my god, these notes that I've written are so good. It's almost like I've planned this. Point number 4 is to read it out loud. Reading your book out loud to yourself makes all the difference. It really, really does, because you could write a sentence and you could think that you are the absolute best writer since sliced bread, and then you read it out loud and it's just a bunch of gobbledygook and it doesn't make sense. And it's only in reading it out loud and kind of hearing the words in a voice that you can figure out if it makes sense. You can figure out if what you're saying is coming across in the way you want it to come across. Like, there are a couple of instances when I was going through this edit when either Rachel or Sim had said, what does this mean? Or this doesn't make sense, or I think there's something missing here. And it's because I'd overcommed, or I'd missed a word, or I'd used the wrong word, or it just needed a little bit more expansion for it to make sense. And like, by reading it out loud, you can hear the clarity and whether or not the clarity is there. And that's another thing that will come from taking time away from it and coming back to it and doing that. So I'm looking forward to doing that when it next comes back in. I mean, and this is point number 5, pat yourself on the back when there's a good bit. Like, when I was reading through it and I was hating it, there were parts of it where there'd be a comment from Rachel or a comment from Sim saying that they really, really liked something. Or I'd find something and I would be like, oh, actually, you know what? That's not too bad. Or that bit's quite good. Or do you know what? That joke is stupid. And I can't believe that it's made it through this edit and I'm glad that it's still here. So I think that's another thing to bear in mind as well, is that it's hard work and it's a hard old slog. So when there is a good thing in there, like, make note of it, or like remember that it's there, or kind of be like, oh, do you know what, that's quite good, or I like that. Or take note of when an editor, if you have this kind of editor who like puts a nice comment on something to tell you when something is good or when something works, take note of those and take stock of that. Something that we learned when I was on the master's degree was that when you are getting feedback or you're getting notes on a performance, always write down the constructive things, but always make sure that you write down the good things as well, so that when you come to look at it, you're not just looking at a mess of you being terrible. You can look at the parts where someone has said something good, or you've done something well, or something has worked. It works the exact same when it comes to an edit. When it, like, take note of the things that are working, take note of the things that are good, take note of the things that either someone else has commented or you have thought is a good thing, and give yourself a little pat on the back, because it's a hard old thing to edit a book. It's a hard old thing to write a book and finish it. So take note of those moments and cherish them, because like, knowing a lot of creative people, I know that we can be quite hard on ourselves, and I know that it's hard to kind of pat yourself on the back when something goes well. So try and get into the habit of doing it and kind of being kind to yourself, taking the constructive criticism, taking the comments on board, making sure that you action them if you feel they're appropriate, but also to make note of the things that work and the things that are good, the things that you are really, really proud of, just to kind of make sure that this remains a joyous experience and doesn't just become a hard working thing. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I know that there are writers who watch this and creatives who watch this, so I hope that makes sense. It's something that we learned while I was on the master's degree, and I think it is an essential thing just to take in daily life, to make note of good things as well as things that are constructive, because having both of those things will make you better at what you're doing, I think. That is the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was sort of like, I don't know what this is going to be like until I edit it, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget to put a thumb on it and subscribe down below if you want to see more things like this. I've got a couple of videos that I'm thinking of making that are going to be about how I got my agent and how the book deal came about and how I write generally, and those are videos that I want to make in future. They're on a list. If you have any other kinds of videos that you would like me to make, whether they're writing based or book based, feel free to leave them in the comments box below, and yeah, we'll chat down there. Thank you so much for watching this. If you made it this far, please do put a green heart emoji on this video. I love each and every one of your faces, and I'll speak to you as soon as I possibly can. Bye!